All right, cool. Well, hello, everybody. I'm going to try to figure out this whole tech thing going back and forth between Facebook and Zoom. So bear with me if I have some tech issues along the way. I wanted to try to do something fun this year, doing kind of a once a month happy hour chat with somebody that I thought, would be relevant to either like boudoir photography or just like the type of women that are in the group and things that they might be interested in. So we're going to start this month with Deise. She likes to say Daisy, pronounced like the flower. So we've got Deise, who is a sex and marriage mindset coach. And she's going to be talking to us a little bit. We talked about a couple of different topics. I think we landed on something that should be good for our group. It's kind of funny. Daisy, she is in the Mob Alliance group with me, so mom-owned businesses. And so I heard her speak a while ago at one of their mob talks. And turns out that Daisy lives in Texas. I grew up on the West Coast, and it turns out that my best friend from when I was like 8, this boy next door that I used to like dance to Paula Abdul in my bedroom with, was her dance partner in college. So that's like totally small world. So we're connected that way. So I'm excited to hear what Daisy has to say, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Brittany. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'm so excited to be here. There's so much that I want to share. And I want to say up front here to think about, why you came here tonight. Have that sort of in your mind. I would really love for everyone to get what they came for. If you think about one thing you are hoping to gain from this, and whether the specific things I talk about feel like they're relevant to you or not, see if you can find what you're looking for that and or not. And then, if we have time at the end for Q&A or chat or whatever it is, like accumulate those questions and share them in the chat. And if you want to interact with each other in the chat as we're going, like I'm going to post some questions and you can write them down for yourself as we go, or you can share them in the chat. I may not be checking the chat as much specifically while I'm talking, but we can I'll go back through here and there. And then Brittany, if you ever want to interject anything or if you have any comments to add, please feel free to do so. Okay, so what I want to talk about with you guys today is common mindset blocks that we can have that get in the way of our pleasure. And one thing that a lot of us don't know is that our most important sex organ is actually our brain. And our brain, a lot of us spend our lives kind of living up in our heads and not really being down in our bodies. And also we can use our heads to get into our bodies, right? And really to have better sex, to have a more delicious and passionate partnership, or even just have better sex without a partner, like your own sexual relationship with yourself, how you perceive yourself, your sexual self-concept, can come down to these sort of 3 basic things. Awareness of what's going on in your mind, like what is blocking your pleasure or what is creating pleasure for you. Do we even know what that is, or do we feel stuck and blocked? How are we talking to ourselves? Are we treating ourselves kindly? Are we loving on ourselves, or shooting on ourselves all the time? Because the way we talk to ourselves, that's going to affect our pleasure. And then also, how much are we able to get into our body? Because especially when it comes to sex, pleasure happens in our body. And if we're feeling really disconnected from our bodies, it's going to be really hard to access that feeling of pleasure. And so I kind of want to prompt you guys through, I want to talk about I kind of want to do this in 3 parts. I want to kind of take a minute to spend some time thinking about, what are the reasons you currently have sex? Like, what is that experience for you? Why do you have sex when you do? And let's bring some awareness to that. And then I want to talk a little bit about, what do we want that experience of sex to be, or of ourselves, or a relationship with our partners, and what do we want that to look like? And then in the third piece, I want to give kind of more of the probably tips or strategies that you're really looking for when you came here, things to watch out for, different ways of thinking things, kind of perspectives. And really my goal would be for you to walk away with at least one thing from this presentation that really makes you think about something differently, or that helps you move forward with your goals that you have, or is just like, wow, that was just really good. I just loved learning this thing, whatever it was. Does anyone have any questions before we get started about anything, what to expect or anything at all? Okay, cool. So we're just going to dive in. So I'm going to try to keep an eye on the time as I go. Okay. Okay, so the first thing that I want you guys to think about, and I just have a few notes here, is like, really think for just a minute about what are the reasons that you have sex when you do. Like what comes up for you? Like even think about in terms of the first feeling that you have. Do you feel like you're having sex because you want to? Do you feel like you're having sex because you think you should? Does it feel like dread or drudgery or like this duty or obligation? Um, so that your partner will feel better about themselves, so that you'll feel like you're a good partner. um, I know I've talked to some people that they feel like the reason they're having sex is just so that no one cheats, like to keep to keep their relationship intact, kind of a thing. They feel like we have to do this or else, our relationship is going to fall apart. Um, they may think that it's their job to pleasure the other person. And there's like all these different things that we learn about sex through media, through our society, through our culture, through our religion, whatever it is, these ideas that we take on. And it's really good just to check in, where am I right now? Because if you think about any kind of, like, say you're going to go on vacation somewhere, wherever you start, like to be able to go on a trip somewhere, you first have to know, like, say you're going to fly to Hawaii or something. You can't book the airplane ticket to get there if you don't know where you are right now, right? Because you don't know which airport you're going to be flying out of. And if you don't know where you want to go, you also can't book that ticket. And if you don't know your method of how you want to travel, or, like it's important to kind of know where we are and where we want to go and then sort of bridge the gap of how we would get there. And so as you guys think about that, with that, I kind of want to share a little bit of my story so you can, relate to where I was as well, because I grew up in a more religious background. I grew up identifying myself as the perfect good girl, didn't hardly dare to like guys because that seemed shameful. And then eventually got to an age where it's like, you need to start liking guys or else now you're going to be weird because you don't like guys. Always like kind of managing myself through this realm of like, what are other people thinking? What's okay or not? What should I be doing or not? Um, and let's see. And also, I very much always saw sex as like this is something that women do for men. Like it's my job to meet my husband's needs. It's my job to fulfill his sexual pleasure. It's my job to, do this whenever he wants to, for however long he wants to, until he gets off, till the end of time, all the things. And I'm curious, like, how many people here relate to that? If anyone, maybe I'm the only one, but I'm curious to know if anyone else relates to that. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. And that's very common, I find, like with women, a lot of women that I've worked with or seen through coaching that I've done as well in my own sex coaching work. And, I also hit this point. So it was after I'd had my third baby. And I felt like our relation was pretty good because I went through a phase in our marriage where I felt like I was very bitter, although I didn't realize it till after the fact. I was just very unhappy in our relationship. And after my third baby, I'd had a lot of times where it's like I could have good sex, it could feel good, but it felt like it was so much work. And I really kind of was on the fence of like, well, could we just be married? Like, do we have to have sex? Does sex have to be a part of marriage? Like, I'd be content just to have a partner. I don't really need sex. It takes so much time. I have all these other things I need to be doing. I'm always so tired. And especially after I just had my third baby and I'd just been certified as a coach at the same time and was building my business and was trying to do that in all the hours when kids were sleeping or not. And it kind of felt like this thing like, yeah, I could improve our sex life, but why? Like, I don't even know that I want to want sex more because then we'd have to have sex more. And that like is one more thing that I'd have to do. Like, why would I even want to do that? That doesn't seem like a good idea for me for any reason at all. And so part of that was first, so, we kind of talked about where sex was, and I kind of saw like also in my marriage, like it felt we were at this neutral place. But when I pictured where I wanted my relationship with my partner to be, it was like I wanted to be in this passionate, fun friendship. Like I felt like my marriage, I'd taken it from like a 1 or 2 on average to like a 3-ish on average with other coaching work that I'd done. And I really wanted to feel like it was like at that 4 or 5-star marriage. Like when you think of like a 4 or 5-star hotel kind of thing, that's how Maggie Reyes, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's another marriage coach, but that's how she defines it. But at the same time, I had a really hard time working through this block of like, but I don't know that I want sex more. And so I think it's really important for us to pause here and to think about this question of like, why would we want to have sex more? Because this was one of the biggest shifts for me as I was listening to a podcast from Danielle Savory. And at the time I was working on time management stuff, trying to grow my business. I think this was around, maybe it was probably 5 or 6 months old, my third one. And she had a podcast on important versus urgent and how we tend to prioritize guys may have heard this concept. It's kind of, we tend to prioritize what's urgent over what's important. And I could really see how I kept wanting, like, I wanted to work with a sex coach. And I was like, yeah, but I need to focus on my business. I need to focus on all these things, and I'll do that someday later. Like, it's good enough for now. I don't want to think about that. I don't even want to broach this or talk, like, think about it right now. I don't even know where to begin with that, or if I even want to. And when I listened to her podcast, I was like, my relationship is important, and I'm not really making any, goals here. And also, she was talking about this. Actually, still, the podcast resonated with me so much. I actually still have the like napkins that I like wrote notes on from this podcast, because it was the first time I listened to it that I considered and really saw like how sex could be a thing for me. Like, so much we receive the message as women. I think that sex is a thing for men, something we do for men for their pleasure, that our pleasure is for them and it's not for us. That I think it can really be kind of this, like mind-blowing concept to even consider that our pleasure is for us. It's something that actually can be very helpful to us and can inspire us. Like, so some of the things that I wrote down on here that I didn't realize that I would gain through working on my sex life, that she mentioned, that podcast, that still resonates with me today and still drives me in this vision. Like, I love this vision I have of this passionista, is how I like to think of it, of this woman who is living her life from this passion and this desire in her heart. And that's another thing I saw, is when I thought about where I was living my life from, it was very much driven by this place of stress and pressure and overwhelm. And I recognized how a lot of times, we stress and pressure ourselves into things and hurry and rush, thinking we're going to get to this place where we can relax and we can rest and we can enjoy ourselves. But the reality is that we get better at what we practice. And so if we're practice doing things from a place of stress and pressure and overwhelm all the time, we're getting better at stressing and pressuring and overwhelming. And really what I wanted to practice more of was coming from my desire, tapping into what I want, acting from passion, acting from enjoyment, and really enjoying the journey versus trying to get the destination of like, I can't wait till it's over and I'm on to the next thing, and then I can't wait till that thing's over and I'm on to the next thing until I get to the point where I'm dead, right? That's when it's truly over, is when we're dead. So I was like, well, that's not actually what I want. I actually want to like enjoy this whole thing. And so, if you think about when you think about our sex lives, we can have all the drama about like, oh my, I don't have time, it's going to take forever. Like, when we work on our sex lives, we learn how to manage all the mind stuff that comes up that gets in the way of our pleasure. We learn how to like less stress, more presence, because to really be able to connect into your body and to feel pleasure, you have to be more present with yourself and your body and with what's going on for you mentally and emotionally. And we're practicing presence, we're building more focus, we're becoming more efficient, we have more creativity and value that we're able to create. It requires us to develop more compassion for ourselves, because a lot of us aren't aware how we are talking to ourselves about, when we fail, or what the other people are thinking of us, or what we're thinking of ourselves. It has us build the skill of developing a different way of being more gentle with ourselves and how we talk to ourselves, and really having this more delicious experience of ourselves and this deeper connection. And so I could kind of go on for a while about this because it was so powerful for me. But really what I want you guys to start thinking about is, why would I even want to want sex more? Because I think that's a critical thing. As long as we feel like it's not for us and we're doing it for someone else, we're never going to want to do it. It's never going to feel like it's something that's benefiting us. And really, it's so funny because it's so funny to see how so many things have switched to 360, because I used to tell myself like, oh, it's going to take forever, right? So these thoughts that we have, it's going to take forever. And then we're procrastinating, spending time with our partner. We feel like if we spend time with so we will spend less time with them because we're afraid if we spend time with them that we're going to have sex. And we don't want to have to say no to sex because then we're going to think terrible things about ourselves. And we don't feel like we can stop when we want to stop. Like, we got to be there for as long as he's there. And that feels out of our control. So we just want to avoid it entirely. So then we'll end up spending less time with our partner. Or if we do spend time, we may end up resenting things or whatever, right? Or if we think it's going to take forever and then we're procrastinating having it, and then it really does take up hours and hours, and you get to bed too late and you're mad about that or whatever it is. It's so funny now, because now if I'm like, if I want to have sex, I'm like, well, let's just do it first. Like, I'm shocked 30 minutes or less we could be done, and I have the entire rest of my evening. It's like mind blowing. And it's so funny because I used to think I was going to be so tired after sex, and now it's like I don't want to have sex too close before bed, because then I'm going to like be energized. Like, So I had these beliefs before that sex was going to be this exhausting, tiring thing. And now my belief about sex is actually that it's this energizing thing, that it's a mood shifter, that it completely shifts the way that I'm viewing the world, because it shifts my mood from one of stress and pressure and sort of overwhelm into sort of like this more focused, clear mind, that there's just more desire or passion there, right? Okay. So that's something to think about. What have you been taught about sex? Because we've received all these messages about sex, and really knowing that whatever we have learned, we can unlearn if we want to. So it's good just to know, what do I believe, and just question it. It doesn't mean you have to not believe it, but just being aware of what that even is so you can make a conscious choice. And then um and then I just want to give, so for this third part here really quick, because I know we're getting close to the time, I just want to give you guys some examples of things, what that might look like, and things to question. So for example, I already kind of gave you one, that sex is for him. Like, what if sex was actually for you? And what if the woman's pleasure was actually what it was all about versus it being all about the man's pleasure? Like, how would that look different? And what would that experience be like? And it's actually interesting thing to think about, because a lot of us, like I had this one client that I was coaching who, like, she really didn't want to have sex, like, but the night before they'd had sex, and it was like she called it a 2 pump chump, where he went for like 2 minutes and was off or whatever, and then it was over. And so the night he felt bad about it, and the next night he's like, oh, I want to, so I'm going to use her words. He said that he wanted her to feel sexually satisfied and offered her a 20-minute massage and sex with him later. And he said that he wanted her to relax. And think about this for a minute. This is another thing we want to manage our minds around, is what do we make it mean when our partners say things? Because immediately she's thinking like, oh, he feels bad. And he thinks that if I relax and have sex and these things, then he can feel better about himself and who he is as a man and a husband. And he says it's for me, but it's really for him. He doesn't actually want to do this for me. He's just trying to make himself feel better. Like, all of that narrative that we have in our mind, we really want to pay attention to, because he actually could have been genuine, but then our mind makes it not genuine, right? And that creates disconnection within ourselves. But even if it had been true, still it affects our pleasure. And so, when she was thinking this, like, oh, I should do this for him so he can feel better about himself. So she's feeling obligated to have sex with him. And then when she's feeling obligated to have sex, she's last minute trying to squeeze it in, the sex and massage with her husband. She's feeling like she can't relax. She's like, oh, don't touch that. No, do this. No, try that. And she's just getting more frustrated with everything that he's doing, because she doesn't actually really want to do it. She's just trying to appease him, right? So she's just getting frustrated with everything he does. Nothing's feeling good with her. For her, she has a hard time trying to get in her body. She's feeling even more disconnected from herself and him. And eventually she just asks for a break, and she's like, I can't do this. I'm done. And she felt like she was showing on herself and just kind of closing herself off to pleasure. And this is where it gets really fun, is because a lot of times we don't see how our relationships are a mirror. And this is where like some outside perspective can be beneficial. Is, to her in that moment, it seemed like she was doing this so he could feel better about himself. But if you think about it, she was really doing it so she could feel better about herself. Because imagine this: she had declined his offer, said, no, thanks, I don't want that tonight, but I really appreciate you for whatever. When I asked her this, she said she would have felt guilty declining his offer. And when she felt guilty, she would have been thinking like, I'm a bad wife. I'm not a good wife. I'm not showing up like I should. I should want to have sex all the time. I should be available when he needs me. So like, she would have felt really bad if she didn't say yes. And by her saying yes, she was then allowing herself to believe that she was a good wife and that she was fulfilling her duties. And so even though it seemed like it was about him, it still really was still about her feeling better. And so if it really is about us at the end of the day anyways, let's do it in a way that actually feels good, right? And doesn't leave us resenting our partners on the back end. Okay. So I want you guys to imagine that like, these are just some options what sex life could look like. One, that it could take less time that you think it does. Two, that you don't always have to be the one that fulfills his needs, or whoever your partner is. And then three, that what if it didn't have to go, like, what if you guys didn't have to end at the same time, or if he didn't have to finish before you did, or whatever. There's all kinds of different possibilities there to explore. What if you didn't feel that pressure that's there? Or what if let's see what else I had here. What if you felt like you could say no if you didn't want to, and there wouldn't be that guilt or like you didn't feel like that made you a bad wife or you weren't fulfilling your quote unquote duties? And what if there wasn't this obligation to meet his needs or these different things? And also, what if, so here's some other examples of things to question is when you think about what the goal of sex is, most people would say orgasm. Anybody agree with that, relate to that? Yes, no, some both looks like. Yeah. Okay. So this is like, can be mind blowing to think about too. What if orgasm isn't actually the point of sex? What if the point is pleasure and just finding what feels good? And that could be, and what if sex, even, I even love questioning what words even mean, because a lot of us think sex means penis and vagina, but that could just actually mean maybe, like maybe we're just gonna like snuggle and feel each other tonight or something and just enjoy the feeling of touch, or maybe we're just going to make out. Now, most of us are scared to do that because we're like, well, if we do that, then we're going to have sex. It's like all or nothing. Like I can't say no once we get started. He's going to be disappointed. He's going to be mad, whatever it is. And that is all stuff that once we get more awareness around what those stories are and how those feelings and emotions are affecting us, you can create a lot more safety that there can be no there, safety that you can have deeper connection with your partner because you can have these more honest conversations and have that actually build your relationship instead of feeling like it's deteriorating it. Because really, when we do things we don't want to do, we think we're saving our relationship by doing that. But then on the back end, we're mad about it and resenting it. And what kind of impact does that have on our relationship? It kind of does the opposite of what we're going for, right? And so really, when we're able to have like go through those, like feel like we can handle those emotions and have those conversations and create that safety, it helps us to build a more honest and authentic relationship as well. So to kind of summarize, I know I kind of gave you guys a lot of random different things, but really think about, where are you right now? Why are you doing what you're doing right now? And what do you want your sexual life to look like? If you could pick anything, and you can always change it, right? But what would you want that experience to be? Like, what is that sexual self-concept? Maybe right now you believe sex is gross and you want to, like, when you think of sex, you want to feel like, delicious. Like sex is this delicious experience. I can't wait to spend time with my honey. And maybe you feel like right now you don't like touching yourself at all. And maybe you want to be like, oh, I love being touched. I love my body. I am like the sexiest thing that ever hit the planet when you look in the mirror, right? Like, what do you want that to be? Where are you headed? And then really the work in between is kind of questioning these assumptions we have about sex. Kind of like, what if sex is for me? Like, and for him, but what if my focus is on how it's for me? And what if I'm not prioritizing his pleasure over mine or at the expense of mine, thinking that his pleasure is more important? What if I saw it as more equal? Or what if I saw it as, the point of this whole experience is for pleasure? And like, maybe it's even like, we're only going to do this for 30 minutes. And if we get off, we get off. And if not, like, we're just done. That was like a huge challenge for me. Like, I did not ever think I could actually do that because I'm like, no, but if he hasn't gone, like, we're not going to be done and the timer goes off. But now, like, we could totally do that. It's no big deal. It's fascinating. And so, and like, also, like, a lot of times we think it's going to take forever, but really it's like our minds is making it take forever because we're stressing so much and we're so much not in our bodies. Like, what if just that connection and presence and dropping in can even be like just touching your skin and being present with that? Or just asking yourself, like, what does feel good? So often we're focused on what does not feel good. I kind of like going back to yoga with Adrienne's phrase, how she always says, find what feels good. Totally unrelated to sex, but I totally think about that in sex too. Find what feels good. And yeah, so, oh, and the last thing I wanted to say, I know we're close on time here, is what would it look like if instead of approaching sex with like duty or obligation or all these shoulds that are kind of like making it hard to access your pleasure, right? What if it was more of this mindset of playful curiosity and kind of play with what that would look for you too? Okay, Brittany, I know I went a few minutes over and we have like 3 minutes left for Q&A and chat.
That is fine.
But I can do it fast. And also I can answer questions in the group afterward, or, if you guys have questions specifically for you, you can also message me.
Yeah, so I don't think that I have any questions from Facebook. I've had a lot of interaction with Missy. If you want to go back and, check out what she's been saying. But does anybody else in the Zoom chat or via Facebook or anything have any questions for Deise or comments, anything that resonated with you?
Yeah, I would love to hear, like, if you had one takeaway, I'd love to hear what those are too, because I like to hear what resonates with people. And I also want to say one thing I've learned is I do think there is a lot of kind of going back to, I didn't fully read what's in the chat, but kind of going back to hormones. I think there is a lot out there where we have these beliefs that hormones affect our sex drive so much. Even all of that is stuff to question, because there actually have been a lot of studies done that hormones don't affect it as nearly as much as we think it does. And really our brain is so much more of an important piece, and like the thoughts that are happening, because what happens, and I didn't actually forgot to share my screen, but we think that it's all these things that are happening outside of us, or all these things that are happening in our body that are determining how we feel. And yes, like there's real stuff happening in our body that we do not control. And also what's happening in our brain either makes that better or worse. So even if there is some hormone thing, like if we're like stressing in our heads and creating a bunch of cortisol, like that's going to have a large impact on how much we're feeling like we want to have sex or not. And, a lot of times we also have expectations of ourselves that we should just be ready right away to go. And, maybe you actually want to create space for yourself to have some transition time to get in the mood without your partner there, whether that's just like listening to music or dressing up or just spending some time with yourself, whatever it is. Really questioning our expectations or assumptions can be really helpful.
Trisha, did you have something to say? I saw you on mute.
I was going to, and then somebody knocked on the door and I spaced it. So
Awesome. Well, Deise, if they want to connect with you, how do they go about doing that?
So I'm on Facebook at Coaching with Deise. And then you can also, like, if you have any questions, you can DM me there, or you can send me an email at hello@coachingwithdeise.com.
All right. All right. Last call for questions. Anybody? No. All right. Cool. Well, thank you, Deise, for hanging out with us. And I think this first one went well. I'm excited. I didn't screw up any of the tech, and everything seemed to work. So I appreciate you all being my guinea pigs, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, and thank you all so much again for having me. This was so fun, Brittany.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. I'm going to stop sharing on Facebook, and I will see you all later.
Bye, guys. Have a great weekend.